Imagine investing your hard-earned money, doing everything you thought was right, and still ending up with a property that you struggle to get rented, that hardly rises in value, and that you wish you never ended up buying. Unfortunately, it's a sad reality that is all too common for so many people. Over the last 9 years, I've helped over 500 Australians invest in property successfully. Unfortunately, many of them came to me after perhaps trying to do it on their own, losing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now wanting to do it correctly. The worst part, almost every mistake they made was avoidable. That's why in today's episode, I'm going to show you the 5 biggest, most expensive mistakes I see so many first-time investors make, how to quickly spot if you're about to make one yourself, and a straightforward strategy that helps you build wealth safely and without regret. Mistake number 1, buying cheap properties in small country towns for supposedly high cash flow. Now, I see many people get this wrong all the time. They think a $500,000 house with a $750 a week rental return in a small country town is a smart buy. Now, if when I gave you those numbers, $500,000 purchase price, $750 a week in rent, and you thought, oh, that could be interesting, then you need to make sure you don't go make this mistake as well. Because I've seen so many investors rush into these small towns where most people rent. First red flag. We never want to buy in a market where most people rent. We want to buy in a market where most people are buying to own property, to live there. I'll talk about this a few times throughout this episode. And so many investors rush into towns where most people rent, and therefore they're often working in like mining industries or construction industries. Many of these are temporary projects. And guess what happens? The tenants leave. That means that then you're going to struggle to get your property rented. Worse, if you want to sell, there's not much buyer demand because most people living in the area were tenants and they have left. So you are going to end up in the worst possible scenario where, sure, it might look good initially, first 2-3 years, that's okay. But unless you're speculating, unless you're gambling, you've got to understand property investing is a long-term game. How will this property, how will this area look in 2, 3, 5 years, even longer? You need to project down the track. And if you're buying in these sorts of markets where most people rent, you could easily end up in the worst situation possible. And look, I get it. You want to probably build passive income through property. So going for positive cash flow from day one might seem logical. But the process to build wealth through property, especially when it comes to passive income, is actually counterintuitive. Instead of focusing on high cash flow areas, you want to focus on areas where there will be high rental growth over time, even if that property is negatively cash flowed. And how do you do that? Well, firstly, you avoid towns that rely on one major employer or one major industry. Instead, focus on large metro areas or large regional areas where there's strong population growth. More importantly, strong demand from owner-occupiers. Like I said before, people are looking to buy, to own property and live there. Couple that with strong jobs growth, economic diversity. And if you do that, odds are you'll be buying in a market where rents are likely to rise as well, because most people who are living there are owner-occupiers. They're buying properties, which means there's probably a shortage of available rental properties, which will force rents up, giving you that rental growth and giving you that positive cash flow eventually over time. It's not going to happen immediately. And before we move on, if you're serious about investing in property, don't go do it blindly. We've put together a totally free checklist that covers the exact things we look for when assessing a suburb. It's helped hundreds of our clients avoid expensive mistakes, and you can grab it using the link in the description below. Mistake number 2, chasing yesterday's returns in today's market. So many people are getting this wrong. They hear how their mate maybe made money in Perth in 2021 when houses were $350,000, and sure, you could get $500 a week in rent. And so they got a property that was positively cash flowed and the market has risen significantly since then. And now they're going about looking for the next Perth in tiny towns. But here's one thing they forget, or actually here's two. First thing they forget is at the time when this was happening, the RBA's interest rate was 0.1%, the lowest it's ever been in history. And I hope it actually never gets to be that low again, because that would mean that we have a major economic crisis. Secondly, Perth was catching up. It's a capital city. It had not grown from like 2011 until 2020, nearly 9-10 years of very little growth. It was a capital city that was going from really being a large mining town to now being a lot more economically diverse. But you can't then go and do that again, because that was sort of one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. It came, and if you missed it, you don't then want to say, oh, my mate did this, so I now want to go and do something similar. It's not going to work in 2025. For example, a common question I get is when people say, I have a borrowing capacity of $900,000. Should I buy one high quality property for something close to that? Or should I split it up and buy two properties for like $450,000? That's what my mate did a few years ago, and it's worked really well for them. And I need to explain to them that the market has changed. You now need to focus on high quality assets, not what's cheap, because what worked a few years ago in a major city is not going to work in a small, low demand country town somewhere. Trying to recreate those conditions in, like I said, those low growth country towns, that's going to backfire and cost you badly. So when you're making your investment decision, when you're choosing what to buy, what strategy to follow, don't rely on stories. Don't rely on what's worked for other people. Use data. Use the right strategy based on today's facts and figures, based on today's market to make the right decision for you. Make sure you're buying in locations where there's current and future good growth fundamentals. Not places that just look like a good deal on the surface. Go deeper, check out the data. Remember, property is not a liquid investment vehicle. It's not something you can buy today and then get out tomorrow if you realize you made a mistake. The cost of making a mistake can be not just potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars if you buy in the wrong area, but more importantly for you, it's time. It could be 3, 4, 5 years before you realize you've made a mistake. And none of us can get that time back. Mistake number 3, buying new builds or off the plan apartments or anything for tax benefits. This one really gets me going, right? I see so many people advising their clients that they should be buying brand new house and land packages in the middle of nowhere or off the plan apartments that may be built in 3 years, 5 years, whenever, because it's a smart tax move. This is what Jenny and Ken did. They were advised to buy a brand new property in what was supposed to be a good suburb for tax benefits. The problem is that when they did their numbers, they realized if they'd taken that same money and instead of buying a brand new property, put it into an established property in a good location where there was a shortage of properties, demand was higher than supply, they would have made at least an extra $230,000. That's what this investing strategy cost them by focusing on tax benefits rather than true wealth creation. You see, the problem with new properties, well, there's a couple of them. Number one, if you look at how much it costs to build a new property right now, there's a massive premium. The cost of construction has always been high, but right now it's higher than it's ever been. That means that if you buy a brand new property, odds are you're buying above market value. For example, there is a particular regional market that I am very familiar with where a brand new property will cost you about $750,000. But the identical property, maybe 3 years old, would cost you $650,000. So buying that new property comes with a $100,000 premium. Or put another way, someone who would have bought that brand new property would have paid $100,000 above market value. Now, let me ask you, if you want to create true wealth through property, should you be buying properties at or even below market value, or should you be buying properties at above market value? Pretty simple answer, right? You want to be looking to buy properties below market value. And the problem is whenever you buy something, like in this example, a brand new property that might be 100 grand above the market, you've got to wait for the market to rise by that 100 grand in order to meet the market before you get any capital growth. And if for whatever reason you need to sell before the market rises, you're going to have to sell your property at a loss. There have been too many stories of people who bought a brand new apartment, a brand new house somewhere, and had to sell it for less than they actually paid for it for whatever reason. So don't buy for tax. Buy instead for true wealth creation. Buy properties in areas where you expect to get both capital growth and rental growth. You want your equity to grow and you want your cash flow to improve. And that means you want to be looking at areas where demand is higher than supply. I've said this multiple times and I will keep repeating it. You want to buy in areas where demand is higher than supply, not where depreciation might be high and you get a pretty picture or a nice depreciation schedule. That's not going to help you build wealth. You want to focus on the fundamentals first and let the tax benefits come if there are any. Mistake number 4. And this is so common, especially in Sydney and Melbourne. Many people think that apartments and houses in the same suburb will give you the same growth. After all, you're buying in the same suburb, right? Many people think that if they can't afford a house in a particular area, they should just buy an apartment there and they're going to be okay. Unfortunately, that's rarely ever the case. A couple who recently chose to become clients of ours told me about their friend. This friend, he bought a unit in Homebush in Sydney about 9 years ago. He spent about $500,000. Today, 9 years later, if that friend was to sell that unit, he'd barely be able to get his money back. Yet, if he'd taken that same $500,000 9 years ago and bought, say, a house in Brisbane for that same money, it would have probably doubled in value, if not more. So by buying a unit in an area he was familiar with, rather than doing his research and maybe buying a house in a strong growing market, he's lost or missed out on $500,000, if not more. That was a trigger point for this particular couple. That's when they realized that you can't just buy an apartment in an area or buy even a property in any area you might be familiar with, an area you think is a good area because you think that might be all you can afford and that should be safe. It's actually a recipe for disaster. That's when they realized they needed professional help and reached out to me. But you might be wondering, why is it that apartments in many areas around the country barely move in price, while houses in the very same suburb or city can rise significantly? Take this suburb of Homebush in Sydney that I just mentioned. While apartment prices have barely moved, house prices have risen significantly. And look, I can find multiple areas in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, almost anywhere around Australia where this has happened. But the question is, why does it happen? It's because of this fundamental philosophy that so many people get wrong when it comes to investing in property. It's simply this: capital growth comes down to just one factor: demand over supply. In particular, demand from owner-occupiers. There it is again, that term, demand from owner-occupiers, people who want to own their own home in an area versus supply. Now, if the COVID pandemic taught us nothing else, it taught us one thing and made it very clear. The average Australian wants to live in a house and they're prepared to move out of expensive markets like Sydney to areas that are more affordable in order to get that house. So demand from owner-occupiers for units is generally less. Secondly, supply is higher. I mean, look at suburbs like Homebush or Westmead in Sydney, Docklands in Melbourne, pick any other suburb where there's lots and lots of apartment towers in your local city, and what will you notice? There's lots of supply. It's not as if there's just a few apartments here. Generally, there's towers up everywhere, right? So when you buy a unit in those kinds of suburbs, you're buying a property type that has less demand and more supply. The equation is actually reversed. It's against you. That's why you don't see the same growth over the long term as houses, often in the very same suburb. So if you're serious about building wealth through property, instead of settling for an apartment in an area you're familiar with, perhaps because you can't buy a house and you want to buy in an area you know, do your research. Find areas where there is an excessive demand from people who want to own homes in that area versus the supply of available homes. Houses in those areas, they're quite likely to rise in value a whole lot more than an apartment maybe near to where you live. And this brings us to mistake number 5, letting tax benefits drive the strategy. Oh, I see this happen so often, and it costs people big time because they structure their investment strategy, the investment portfolio, purely for the tax benefits. In particular, I see so many doctors, dentists, and high-income executives falling for this so-called plan, and it almost never works. For example, a doctor client of mine reached out to me after his first investment property failed, and it failed in a way he never expected. You see, he bought a property in what many people would consider a good suburb in Sydney. He was so sold, though, on the tax benefits, and he was just too busy helping people, he's a doctor, that he wasn't told what due diligence to do. He didn't know what to check. And what happened? Well, he got his tax benefits for sure, but his property barely rose in value. Worse, a few years later, because he didn't know how to do his due diligence when he bought the property, there were cracks that started to appear in the walls of the property, and it cost him over $100,000 to fix. But you know what was even worse than that? The lack of growth in the property, plus all the additional costs, caused so much stress in his marriage that in the end, his wife asked him for a divorce. Now, while that might seem like quite an extreme example, I've actually seen it happen more often than you might think. That's why I say property investing is, yes, a great way to build wealth, but there are risks associated with it. Anyone who tells you otherwise is just either blindly naive or they're just trying to flog you something. So please be careful. Don't focus on tax benefits. Yes, tax perks are helpful. They make it easier to hold the property. That's the point, but they shouldn't be the reason you buy a property. A great tax return doesn't make up for a poor performing property, especially in this poor doctor's case. Now, let's imagine you use the equity in your home and with your borrowing capacity, you buy an investment property for around $800,000. Based on current interest rates and all the additional holding costs that come with having a property, like your rates, your insurance, etc., it'll probably cost you on average about $2,000 per month out of your pocket. That's after getting the rent. So $2,000 per month, that's $24,000 per year. Now, you might get $10,000 back based on your tax bracket, so then the properties actually only cost you $14,000 out of pocket, right? Now, the tax benefits, like I said earlier on, they are there to help you hold the property. So yes, you're redirecting some of the tax that you're paying towards the government towards building your own property portfolio. And like you, I agree, that's certainly a smart decision, but it should never be the aim. Treat your tax benefits as icing on the cake, not the cake itself. First, focus on buying the right asset in the right location. Then use your available tax benefits to support you in holding the property long term. Now, if this all feels like a lot to get your head around and you just want help making sure you're actually on the right path and you don't make any of these mistakes, we offer a free strategy call where we walk you through your situation and show you exactly what we do if we were in your shoes. So if you want to build a portfolio that actually grows and gets you closer to financial freedom, book your free call using the link below. So now you know the most expensive mistakes investors keep making and how to avoid them. But even if you follow all the right rules, if you still end up buying the wrong type of property in the wrong area, you're still going to lose. That's why in this next video, we break down the types of properties to avoid in 2025. Go watch that next.